Hello, and welcome to VCU Voices. I'm Jay Davenport, Vice President of Development and Alumni Relations at VCU. I'm excited to host this bi-weekly webinar series that introduces VCU leadership, noteworthy alumni, students, and friends to the VCU community. Today, I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Jennifer Malat, who is our new Dean of the VCU College of Humanities and Sciences. Dr. Malat began her tenure at VCU in July of 2020. Before coming to VCU, Dr. Malat worked at the University of Cincinnati, where she served as Divisional Dean for Social Sciences in the College of Arts and Sciences. Dr. Malat, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be chatting with you virtually.
Absolutely. It is a little different in this current environment where we can't have you out and about and meet with more groups. So this might be the next best thing.
Yes, yeah. And I think we're getting used to it, but I am looking forward to being in real life with people again.
Absolutely agree. So you most recently were in Cincinnati. So I guess I have to start off by asking you the most important question for somebody coming from Cincinnati, and that is Skyline or Gold Star Chili?
Skyline. That Cincinnati chili is quite a thing, which for people who don't know is spaghetti with chili on it for some reason and mounds of bright orange cheese. But there is a Skyline right up the street from where I lived, so I could walk to Skyline. My children sometimes chose Skyline for their birthday dinners, so Skyline is right there.
Completely understand. I think I shared this with you before. My in-laws live in Cincinnati, and it is hilarious when we visit. It's one of the things our own children, they always want to go to Skyline. So I think it's universally the hands down favorite. So now, serving as dean, I'm certain as a young faculty member, you always aspired to become dean of a college. And so I always love to ask people, how did you go from young faculty member to wanting to be involved in academic leadership? Just give us an idea of that adventure.
Right. Well, that's funny. So you know well that most young faculty members don't imagine themselves as future deans. And I didn't either. And in fact, didn't even imagine myself as an associate dean just months before I became one. That wasn't on my radar. By the time I came here, I had been at the University of Cincinnati for 20 years. So a long time. It was my job straight out of grad school, and I'd moved up the faculty ranks and was in the Department of Sociology, that's my home discipline, and had been excited about my involvement in the college in broader sorts of activities. I was doing mentoring and advocacy, especially for women who are having babies before tenure, because that was something I had done. And so sometimes people would ask me to talk to folks. And because my area of research is on race, I was often connected with young faculty who study race, which often meant faculty of color, to do mentoring and had lots of friends around the college from those sorts of relationships. And I also was working on an initiative that was called the Cincinnati Project, still called that. I'm just not there anymore. Called the Cincinnati Project, which was, it was just the kernel of an idea and just getting started at the point when a new dean came into the, well, maybe I'll back up and say what it is. So the Cincinnati Project was an opportunity. It was an initiative that sought to bring together faculty and students in the college with community groups to do research with a direct community benefit. And so these were sometimes small projects that a class might do as part of the class experience, and sometimes big collaborative projects that involved many faculty and students from our own college and even from other colleges as well. So, but it wasn't all of that at this point when I was still a faculty member. It was just an idea, and we were starting to pull things together. And there was a new dean, and his assistant contacted me and said, the dean would like to have coffee with you, and you don't say no to that. And so I didn't have any idea why he wanted to meet with me. And I went and I did what you do when you're trying to impress the dean, and talked about all the things that I care about and that I'm doing. And he and I got along well. I knew him from a couple grants that we were both on, but I didn't know him well. Yeah, and then at the end, he said, well, I'm going to have these associate dean positions and we're reorganizing the college and I hope you'll consider applying for one of them.
Wow.
I responded, no, I don't want to do that. That isn't my future. But the more I thought about it and I talked to some folks about the opportunity, I realized that it really was an exciting opportunity. And so, yeah, so then I became an associate dean and the title got changed and became a divisional dean. And now here I am. I mean, eventually I sort of knew it was time for me to move on to new challenges. And that's when um, that's when I started looking. So yeah.
Absolutely. So, having served on a few search committees for some of our deans, it's fascinating how you hear a very, very similar story where people were happy doing what they were doing, and suddenly they were plucked from the faculty ranks into more of the academic leadership. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
what are some of the things you're working on right now in the college that you're particularly proud of?
Mhm. Well, what I'm most proud of in the college is all of the people in the college. I started during the pandemic and I interviewed for this job in January of 2020 and I
Mhm.
accepted the position in February of 2020. And then, of course, everything changed in March. And so the entire time that I have really been a part of the college has been during the pandemic.
Right.
And also, 2020 had other challenges and conflicts and changes as well. So there was a lot happening and it has been such an enormous pivot for our college that serves, thousands and thousands of students almost exclusively in person before the pandemic to pivot to an online experience for students. And online classroom experiences, online experiential learning experiences, labs, figuring out how to put in new safety protocols in labs, how
Mhm.
to continue one's research and to pivot research areas. Oh, I could go on and on. People have done an enormous amount of work to make the experience and the mission of our college continue despite the challenges that came with the pandemic. And and we can see that they have. I mean,
Right.
student evaluations of courses are still high. Actually, the averages are higher now. And I think that really reflects that students are seeing the commitment of the faculty to their experience. So yeah, that's what I'm just proud to have joined this college and to be a part of all that people are achieving here.
Absolutely. Now, the Cincinnati project is fascinating to me. And I'm certain there's a reason that you latched onto a project like that. But in general, where do you find your inspiration?
I find a lot of inspiration in observing people who are doing the things that are the future, in people who are living in ways that give us the path to where we want to go. And I especially see that when people are acting in their most authentic ways in the university space. And that often means that people who have been excluded from institutions of higher education are making this space their own. And I'll give you a really concrete example of what this looks like and what inspires me to want to do my job well as a dean. At the University of Cincinnati, I worked really closely with a student whose name is Curtis Webb, and I wasn't part of he's a PhD student, so I wasn't part of his committee, which is the official advisory group for a student, but we worked together on the Cincinnati project, the Community Engagement Initiative. And so we had a lot of work to do together, so we got to know each other really well. And when it came time for him to finish his dissertation and defend his dissertation, it was the pandemic. And in fact, I lived here. And he invited me to his dissertation defense, which is a period when a student presents their dissertation work and then is asked questions by their committee and they have to defend it. So he invited me to his online defense because one positive aspect of Zoom life is that anyone can come from anywhere to attend something. And so I put it on my calendar, and I, I could not be more happy that I did, because Curtis, I knew he had been working on his dissertation. Is about Black joy, and how young Black people in particular find joy in predominantly white spaces and make space for authentic Blackness in those spaces. And I get to his dissertation defense, and that is what he has created in his defense. He had a DJ at his defense, and which was reflective of what was happening in the pandemic. So there were lots of online DJ events, and some had become really popular at the beginning of the pandemic. And he had invited and had this community there of almost 100 people who had come to support him on Zoom and to participate in the celebration of his accomplishment. And the chat, because of the atmosphere Curtis had made, the chat was filled with people exchanging jokes and welcoming each other, but all so many that were based in the Black experience. And it was very much a space for a celebration of Black identity as Curtis and the people he invited experienced it. But here we were in this institution where, there's a small proportion of students who are Black, and a very small proportion of students who earn PhDs are Black. And it was so wonderful. And Curtis, of course, went on to do a sort of a normal defense. He presented his study and he answered questions, but all the while, in the background, you could feel this energy that Curtis had created. And I look at that and I think, that is what I want to see more of. I want to create a space or support a space that can allow more of those kinds of opportunities. And Curtis, of course, is fully credited for what he did with his dissertation defense,
Right.
which, if you go on Twitter, you can see the overwhelming enthusiasm for what he had done. Other students were inspired, and everyone was inspired by it. But also, I'm happy for Curtis that there was space for him to do this, right? It meant that his dissertation committee, he knew that he could count on them to support him, and that there was the space for this to happen. And I don't know how much this mattered, but it almost certainly did. His dissertation committee included 3 Black scholars who were senior. There was also a white scholar on his committee, if I remember correctly. But it meant that there were Black people with enough power to hold this space to, and that the tone had been set that we welcome Curtis to do what he wanted to do with his defense. And I want to say I'm telling this whole story with Curtis's permission. He knows that I want to talk about it, and he knows how much it inspired me to think about, how as dean can I serve in a way that will bring into our college community the right mix of people to allow lots of different authentic expressions of who people are. And that means faculty, that means staff, that means students, and create a culture and policies and processes that also make very clear that we welcome people bringing their authentic selves into our college, because it makes us all richer. It helps more people experience this opportunity. It allows more people to have the experience that they want to have here while they're seeking their education. So those moments, those are my moments of inspiration, of thinking, how can I serve best to help people be their authentic selves in the college?
That is very powerful.
I hope so. Now I'm breaking character. But yeah, it really is that story in that moment. I thought, this is what it is about. This is what I want to do with my career, is use my position to make space for people to be their authentic selves.
So far during your time as dean, what's your favorite story, or what's your favorite development that you would like to share at this stage?
Well, I mean, I said how exciting it is to see all of the work that people are doing. And that's certainly true. I can tell you a funny story about getting locked out of my building. That might be the funniest thing that has happened. It was the 7-year anniversary of my partner and me meeting, and so that was on October 1st. And so I promised I would be home by 5:30 or 6 o'clock. I wouldn't work late. I was going to come home on time. I was in such a hurry to leave my office, where I was the only one in because of the pandemic, that I locked both my phone and my keys in my office and walked out the front door. And I don't know how that happened, but because there's no one inside to let me back in, I had no way to get back in and no phone to use to call anyone for help. And I didn't want to leave my things overnight because at that time, the latch didn't always lock automatically on the door. So if someone came in when I wasn't here, the door might have been left open with the keys and my phone inside. So I had my bicycle, because I ride my bike to work when the weather is nice. So I got on my bike and I started to ride around and think, where can I find someone who can help me? And then I saw the math exchange and I thought, well, certainly there are people in there, and I know about the math exchange. That's part of the college. So I'll stop in there. So in I go with my helmet. And, we're all dressed for Zoom. So I have on jeans, which isn't how jeans are normally dressed. And I'm going in with my bike helmet and my jeans, and I walk in and it's like a library in there. It's filled with students, but not filled with social distancing, but there's students in there, and it's completely silent. And I go up to the person working and I very quietly say that I locked myself out of my building. Could you call public safety for me to have them come and let me back in? And so he picks up his phone and he puts it on speakerphone and he calls, but then the person can't hear us very well. So by this point, we're shouting. I'm shouting, I'm the dean. I'm the dean of CHS. I'm locked out. And then he's saying, spell your name again. So we are shouting at the front of the room with all of these very quiet students. And then he asked me my birthday to confirm my identity, not knowing that I'm in a room, basically now doing an improv theater for a bunch of students who came to work on that. So yeah, that's my funniest story of something that has happened. So now I am very careful. Every time I enter my building, I make sure I have my key.
Well, you're not alone. It was probably the first month that I was with VCU. One night I was working late and I went back to the parking garage. The gate was down and the door was locked, and I had no way to get back into the building. And the person, when you push the buzzer, they said, will you just use your pass? And I said, unfortunately, that's in my car. I didn't know I needed my pass after hours.
Yep. It was tricky. I should have learned my lesson. I locked myself out once at my previous job, but at that point we were still in person. And I just thought, who in this building do I know always works really late?
Right.
And then anyway, it was pretty funny. I did have my phone at least then, but I was able to call. I'm like, it's Jennifer. I'm outside the building. Are you inside the building? Please come and open the door.
It is different. And when you're the new dean, you're just hoping that everybody remembers and, that everybody is willing to help right away. So,
well, they certainly have been. That's also been a really unexpected delight of the college. I wondered what it would be like to start a job in this time when people were so distressed. And I mean, they still are. It's interesting, the phases of the pandemic. I feel like when I was coming on, we were still figuring it out. We didn't know how we were going to live remotely. We didn't know how long it would last. We still don't know how long it will last, but we can feel now like we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And when I came on, it was different. And I thought, what will this be like? But in the end, people were so willing to help. I asked for volunteers for committees that I called the COVID response working groups, and they were to help us think about teaching, research, equity, and the budget during the pandemic, and what kinds of strategies can we bring to bear on these these important questions about how we have to change quickly. And I had over 100 volunteers from people in the college who wanted to serve, to try to move us forward despite these challenges. And I was so moved by that, to know that these folks are committed. They are willing to try to do new things with me. And I've really been thankful for that.
That is wonderful to hear. So you mentioned these committees, and I guess this leads me to my next question for you, which is, so you're starting year 2. What is on the agenda for you, and what are the priorities that you have as dean going into this second year?
Yeah. My first one is I really hope I get to meet people in person. It's strange to be doing a virtual job. So yes, I would like to meet people in person. I want to meet students. I want to meet the faculty and staff in the college. And I want to meet our alumni, whom all of these people I have only been meeting on a Zoom screen. So that's one thing that I'm looking forward to. But I'm also excited to see the progress, where we go. I mean, we've put a lot of things in motion. And so now the question is, what will come from this? You know, there's a lot of energy of thinking about new degree programs, thinking about, what kind of mix of online and in person we should be doing when we come back. People are asking me research questions, and all of those things are really exciting. And so I look forward to seeing where those things go. I also am excited to see what comes from the organization in the dean's office. I have brought some new folks onto my team, and there are some new job roles on the team, sort of swapping things out and mixing things up a little bit. And I can see all of the energy and ideas that are coming from that. And I really look forward to seeing what comes from that. So for example, we have a new position that is the Associate Dean for Equity and Community Partnerships. And so that's a new position in the college. And I can already see, I mean, we'll have a website that deals with diversity and equity where we haven't before. And the website, I can see it. It's not public yet, but it exists in development form. And it lists all of the things that already she has accomplished around policies and professional development opportunities and all sorts of things. So that's great. And that will just continue and grow. And I'm excited about that. And I'm also excited about, we're reimagining the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Programs role, and having that be a role that's really thinking about how we do recruitment and how we engage students once they're here. And lots of people are excited about that change and that being an important focus of the work that we're doing in the college. So you'll be seeing more College of Humanities and Sciences all around, us talking about what we're doing and how we engage with students.
So one of the things that's fascinating, you have the largest college at VCU, and over 25% of all the alumni of VCU graduated from the College of Humanities and Sciences. So my question for you would be, what is the priority and what is the future going to look like for humanities and sciences, both at VCU and then broader? What's going to happen post-pandemic?
Yeah. What is? It is a question. No, I'm really working on this. I'm bringing together new committees to think about some of these questions too. But very broadly, I mean, I have to say, I mean, that question is the number one question for me as a dean. How do we move forward? How do we think about the future that students face after the pandemic, and what kind of education that we should be providing for folks? And, the struggle that we have seen between maintaining the core and the diversity and sort of the liberal arts aspect of a education that you get in a college like the College of Humanities and Sciences, where you're taking humanities and social sciences and natural sciences, and you're learning all of these things together. that is really valuable. And so we need to think about how we maintain that core, but then also how we prepare students for jobs, because it's really clear students are coming in at a time of high unemployment, of, having experienced a lot of economic insecurity and greater rates of poverty and challenges. So the focus that people have had on being concerned about if their degree will get them a job is likely not to go away.
Right.
So how do we help prepare students for jobs while also helping to prepare people who will be lifelong learners, who will be good democratic citizens, critical consumers of data, understand science, and know how to learn how to love, literature and other kinds of arts. And so how do we do all of that? And how do we do it with a group who will have done a bunch of online learning for high school, for students coming straight out of high school? And, they just will be seeing the world completely differently. And we need to think about how we get ready for that. But I'm confident we can do it, because the pivot we have made in the last year is phenomenal. So, yeah.
It truly is. And, my degree was in the social sciences as an undergraduate. And, it is amazing to me how each and every day I use some aspect of my undergraduate education. And so that, I think, is the marvel at social science education. And then why the humanities, I think, will always be important in the American workforce.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we could give you a magic wand for the day, and you could change one thing about American higher education, what would that be?
I would make it free for everyone whose family can't afford to pay for it. And I think that it would help alleviate some of the burden that people feel about worrying about the job and worrying about the bills, so that they could engage with the opportunity to get the education that they deserve while they're here, and the breadth that I was talking about that we can offer in the college to explore new ideas and to just have the freedom to think about things in new ways, that I think can be a real strain for folks who are concerned about the debt that they will have when they're done. And also then not having debt affects people's long life after college as well. So that would be my magic wand wish, would be to welcome people to campus without the worry of thinking about money.
It's quite noble. And one of the things that has always struck me since my first arrival here at VCU is the incredible need our students have, and the opportunities that scholarships and the ability to put financial aid packages where there is no debt involved, how that really does change the dynamic and the graduation rates.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you certainly know this, but even small awards can make a big difference. I think that, when I first heard about like completion grants, is that something that we have here? Do we give those kinds of awards?
We do. So our Tamiki Legrand's area absolutely does that.
Yeah. And when I first heard about them, I imagined you would have to give a student $20,000 to help them over the finish line. But then I learned that often it's much less than that. It can just
Right.
be $1,000 sometimes is all that students need to pay that month's rent or make that final bit of tuition payment so that they can get across the finish line. So yes, those awards are so key to our students.
Absolutely. And how heartbreaking to think that, somebody has completed 4 or 5 years of their degree and they're, $1,000 away from that final success. So,
yeah.
Well, the final question I have for you is, why don't you tell us something about yourself that might surprise people?
Well, I don't know what people make of me, so what would surprise them and what wouldn't. But, I can say one thing that often people shake their heads at about me, which is my favorite vacations are vacations I have to train for. I love to go to the Rocky Mountains and go hiking and go camping in the backcountry. So backpacking, carrying all of the things I need on my,
Wow.
and you have to be in shape to do this is when you live at the low elevation that we're at to go up to a high elevation and hike, you have to prepare for it. And so while most people would say, well, then don't do it, I think it's great. And I actually really missed it in 2020. I wondered aloud why I would even exercise at all if the outcome weren't that I was going to go on a vacation. But I really, it is an exciting part of my life that I look forward to, it becoming spring and knowing it's time to start training for vacation.
Well, I can say this, having done backcountry camping once before, everybody should do that at least once. It's truly amazing, and it's a completely different experience. So
It is spectacular. It is just a total gift, and I'm really thankful that I'm able to do it. And there are lots of places around here to go too. That has been a wonderful part of moving to Richmond, is getting to explore all of the places there are to go camping. Even though I haven't been here long, I have already been out and done a lot of great camping here. We went to the Cranberry Wilderness, which was a few hours away in West Virginia, and was really remote. We didn't see anyone else when we were there, literally no one else when we were back there. And then we camped right on the beach at Falls Cape State Park. I think that's what it's called.
Right.
You can't drive there. You have to go by sea kayak, foot, or bicycle. And we rode our bikes down the beach with our backpacks on and camped in there. It's been great. It's really fun to be in a new place and get to explore new places to go backcountry camping.
Well, as an outdoor enthusiast, you certainly have moved to the right state.
Yes, I have. It's great.
Jennifer, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm really glad we had this opportunity to introduce you to more of the VCU community.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to meeting more of the VCU community in person soon.
Absolutely. I think we all are looking forward to returning to some normalcy in the very near future. So thanks again so much for your time today.
Thank you.